doing, War Eagles? Are coming to you from the Reynolds kitchen again. I guess this would be a good time to explain, now that we're a couple videos in, why I even do this. I do not aspire to have my own cooking show, but I do teach a classroom where it's required to teach daily living skill curriculum. So in an effort to do daily living skills in a virtual environment, I've had to get creative, and one of the things that I've done is I brought you into my house. I brought you into my garden. And so we're going to be doing some cooking here at the house, and we're going to be doing some cooking here in class. Today I'm going to cook the things that I like. One of my favorite things in the whole world, I grew up eating this stuff, is what we used to call wilderness stew around the house, because the ingredients always changed, but we knew one thing was constant in this recipe, and that is somebody snuck up on an animal and killed it in the woods and brought it home and then put it in a freezer, and now we're going to eat it. Okay, so today we're going to talk about getting rid of some of these late season garden vegetables. I've got all these garden vegetables over here, and I don't know about the kids, but I'm getting really tired of eating the same old vegetables. So this is one good way to get rid of some stuff that you got laying around the house that you don't feel like jarring and canning and putting up anymore. We also just recently took a camping trip, and we have a lot of stuff left over from that. So I'm trying to get rid of some things. So wilderness stew is one of those recipes that lends itself well to that. Okay? So in our shows, I talk a lot about kitchen safety. I talk about food safety. Kids who are in middle school would be able to cook at home and kind of help out around the house. When I was little, my mother gave us a lot of chores, and so over the years I've gotten really comfortable with cooking. I've gotten really comfortable with taking care of the house and taking care of myself and raising kids and things like that. So I know what you're thinking. You're a guy, you shouldn't be in the kitchen. No, that's actually not true. In my kitchen, I do most of the cooking. And when I was growing up, I did most of the cooking, and my two sisters always had the chore to clean up after us brothers who were always doing the cooking. So I grew up doing this kind of stuff, and I really enjoy it. So I'm glad to be able to bring a little bit of me to you. So enough said. So let's talk about what we've got to do first. We've got potatoes, we've got carrots, we've got celery, we've got onion, we have some dried mushrooms that I found in the pantry. We've got some tired looking little peppers here, a bunch of weird sized, weird colored tomatoes. I found a bell pepper. I think that's probably all we're gonna use. We'll cook that stuff another time. This looks like this is gonna be plenty right here. So the first thing I gotta do is I gotta cut up all these vegetables. You wanna cut them, you don't wanna cut them up so small that they turn to mush whenever you put them in the pot. You actually want your vegetables and your meat to be about the same size, maybe about an inch. So you don't have to cut these up really small, but you do have to get them cut up. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with the celery. That's the easiest. So what I have here is I have the celeries cut up. Once I've already cut up everything about an inch in size, there's no reason to leave it on the cutting board. I need more space. So go ahead and put that in the pot. It'll be fine. One of the tools I wanted to talk about today is my Instapot. I used to use a crock pot a lot, and that works, but it takes a very long time to cook it. Sometimes I'll go to work and I'll come back home and it's cooked all day long and it's still not ready. It's a very slow cooker. Instapot is a neat way to get something done really quick. So something that would normally take 8 hours to cook in a crock pot, I can have ready in about 20 or 30 minutes, and we can still have that for dinner. So I'm using this tool today. It also has a bunch of features on it that makes it pretty much foolproof, which means it's very easy to use. And as long as you have the directions on what to put in as far as minutes and cooking temperature, there's pretty much no way to make a mistake using this. The next ingredient that we're going to use are carrots. Again, you want to cut the ends off the carrots and then just cut them up in inch slices. All right, so the next thing you'll have are the carrots, and they go in the pot too. Then we'll do the onion. By the way, these mushrooms, they're very small when they're dehydrated like that, but you can just throw those in the pot I like mushrooms when I'm cooking with meat because it absorbs all that really good flavor that you got in there. The next thing to go in, onions. The next thing to go in is a bell pepper. It's from the garden, that's why it's got a neat color to it. All right, the next thing to go in are baby sweet peppers. Okay, the next thing to go in are potatoes. You don't have to put potatoes in, you can actually put any starch in it. You can put noodles or rice, potatoes. You could even get fancy and put some quinoa or something like that in there. The next ingredient, we have a bunch of tomatoes from the garden that I'm really glad to see go because we've made a lot of tomatoes this year. And then the last ingredient, and not exactly my wife's favorite, but I grew peppers this year that got a little spicier than usual, so I'm not going to tell her that I'm putting this in there. But she'll have a nice little surprise. She doesn't like hot stuff, but I do. So what I do is I de-seed the peppers. Take all the little seeds out of it, and when you do that, it's not as spicy, but you still have a little peppery flavor in there. So we won't tell her. And the very last ingredient are some spicy red peppers. All right, I wanted to give you a look at this. We have almost a full pot here, but I do want you to know that most of that stuff is vegetables. There's a lot of water in it. It'll actually cook down and kind of liquefy as it cooks. We do have one ingredient left that we have not put in here, and that's the meat. Tonight we're using, I don't remember what that is. I think it's deer meat. It could be wild hog meat, whatever. It's going in there. We're gonna make sure that's all kind of mixed up in there. I just use my hands. You can use a spoon if it grosses you out, whatever. But always keep clean hands in the kitchen because I like to get my hands in it as part of what makes it fun and organic to me. All right, so now that we have our pot ready to go, we're gonna talk a little bit about the seasonings that I like to use. One thing we do need to talk about, when you're making a stew in a crock pot or in an Instapot or even on the stove, when it cooks for hours and hours and hours, a lot of times it tends to come out very bland. Bland meaning it doesn't have a lot of flavor to it. So I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna flavor my stew and let you know that whenever you're having some natural ingredients, like these are very natural earthy ingredients, I want to go with a very natural savory flavoring. So here's what I've come up with to flavor this whole pot. And we have garlic here, bay leaves, we have a little pepper, some smoked paprika, which gives it a nice rounded flavor, oregano that I've dried from the garden. We have some thyme here and some sage and cumin, which also gives it a nice earthy flavor. And then here we have our salt. I don't put a lot of salt in mine if I'm using beef bouillon cubes, which I'm using here because they actually have a lot of salt in them. So all that goes in the pot. I put the seasoning in the pot first before I add any water because that way when you pour the water over the seasoning, it pushes it all down to the bottom of the pot. You don't have to get in there and mix it up. The last thing I'm gonna put is a little chipotle pepper sauce. This gives it a nice kind of smoky flavor. I don't put a lot in there. It's not very spicy, but it does have a lot of flavor. Maybe about a tablespoon. About 4 cups of water ought to do it. You're not gonna put a lot of water in here because most of these vegetables will actually cook down and become watery. So you don't want it with too much water in your soup or your stew because you're gonna either serve it over bread or serve it over rice if you choose to do that, and then it's not gonna be too soupy. So 4 cups of water ought to do it, and then we bring it over here. We lock down our Instapot. When you hear it ding, you know it's on there tight. So then you're going to set it for 15 minutes.